There are many things which could be hazardous to your well-being in this world. Global warming? Well, a lot of people say it's hazardous or dangerous, but I think you can dismiss that as a hoax. Gun violence? Well, if everyone carried a gun, a concealed gun, all this gun violence would evaporate like the dew in morning sunshine. But do you know something that's really hazardous to your well-being that we have to take care of? Books, the true hazard to your well-being. Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I want to talk about books, hazardous to your well-being. Just the other day, YouTube served me up a channel that I had not seen before. He is a small booktuber. It is Please Read Your Book. And the video he made was 5 extremely dangerous books you absolutely should not read. And I was rather entertained, amused, and informed. So I decided, why not borrow his idea and talk about the hazardous books, the books that people should avoid reading because it will ruin that well-being in your mind. And maybe they are dangerous too. So I have 5 books that I want to introduce to you that maybe you should avoid reading because they will be hazardous to your well-being. Number 1, Bartleby the Scrivener by Herman Melville, published in 1853. The purists out there are going to say, that is not a book. That is a short story. That is a novella. And to them I say, it is very bad for your well-being to fact check. No one should be fact checking. That's just a free offer that I'm giving you. Don't fact check. Okay, it is the story of a lawyer. He's a rather elderly lawyer in New York City working on Wall Street. And back in those days, there were no photocopiers. And in order to copy your legal documents, you have to have these men called scriveners, which would copy your legal documents for you. And he hired a man named Bartleby. And he would copy the text, but he would never verify the correctness of his text. He would just say, I prefer not to. And it got worse from there because Bartleby started preferring not to do a lot of things. Now, disobedience to your employer is really rather rebellious. That is hazardous to your well-being because, of course, you are always supposed to obey what your employer tells you to do. But why was Bartleby this way? The lawyer discovered that Bartleby may have had an incident in his previous employment that caused him to examine the world in a way that was not mentally healthy. He questioned his existence to the point where all he could do was stare out into a blank wall and ponder what it means to be alive. And ultimately, Bartleby chose to think his way out of existence. Now, is that something good for people to know about? No, you should not question your existence. You should only obey your employer, and copy your documents. And not only copy them, verify that those documents are correct. Do not question your existence. Do not prefer not to. And that's why this book, this story, is so hazardous to your well-being. It might give you ideas that there is something in this universe that you can ponder and you do not understand. And that is truly dangerous to you. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, originally published in 1866. It is the story of a young student in St. Petersburg, Russia, Raskolnikov. He lives in a small, hot, dirty garret room in an attic. He is so poor, and he's a brilliant student. He is one of the have-nots. And in his mind, he thinks of an old crone. She is a moneylender. She is one of the haves. And is it not proper for a smart student, one of the have-nots, to take from the haves, even if that means he has to commit a murder? And that is what Raskolnikov says he has to do. But Raskolnikov develops this thing, hazardous to his well-being. It is called a conscience, where he begins to doubt his own philosophy, the idea that he is a superman, an Ubermensch, above the law, where he is able to take from the haves. So he will get out of that situation of being one of the have-nots. And what does this consciousness lead him to? The theory is that the murder of the old hag, the have, is a crime. But then there comes the punishment, that he discovers that he was not deserving of that money, that he had no right to murder that woman. Is that good? Is it not that hazardous to your well-being? Because a conscience is never a good thing to have. And the subtle part of this story is that he does get punished, and perhaps that punishment is justified, but it is justified because he was a have-not. And if he had been a have-more, it would have been absolutely correct to take from that have-crone woman. The have-nots, they don't deserve that. They cannot have that. They must be satisfied with their have-not status in life and never try to reach above it. And even if you do, don't commit a crime. And if you do commit a crime, don't develop a consciousness about it, because that consciousness will be hazardous to your well-being. Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy, originally published in 1896. Jude is an orphan being raised by a lackadaisical aunt. He has this desire to gain knowledge, like an educated man. He wants to study Greek. He wants to study Latin. He wants to go into the ecclesiastical life and teach people. But he is a poor boy, and that kind of life is reserved for the wealthier class of human beings. And so he has to develop skills as a stone carver. And as he's doing that, he meets a woman, and they get married, because she fakes a pregnancy before they are married. And right away, you know Jude is going down that hazardous path that will destroy your well-being. He has premarital relationship with a woman, and she deceives him into getting married. And once they get married, this woman decides, Jude is a kind of a loser. He's just a stone carver. So she heads out to Australia, and Jude is on his own until he meets a cousin named Sue. He loves his cousin Sue, and not in the way that cousins are supposed to love each other. They develop a sexual relationship. They live as man and wife when they are not man and wife. And the rest of society judges them. They say, you are not supposed to live as man and wife. But they do. They feel that their life is good. And that is the hazardous part. Because, of course, their life is not good. spirals out of control and into disaster because, of course, society is right to judge them for the wrong that they are doing, trying to raise a family, trying to live as a loving couple. How dare they do that? When this book was first published, it raised a hue and cry against Hardy. They said it was irreligious. They say it was immoral because he does not condemn Jude and Sue. And that is why this book is hazardous to your well-being. Because what if you gain that sympathy that Hardy granted to his characters? What if you refuse to condemn them? Would that not be hazardous to your well-being? The Stranger by Albert Camus, originally published in 1942. Morceau is a young Frenchman living in Algeria. He gets notified that his mother, who was in an old folks' home, has recently died. And he goes to her funeral, and he does not cry at her funeral because he did not have that kind of relationship with his mother. And after returning from the funeral, he starts up a romantic liaison with a beautiful young woman. And later, there are circumstances. He finds himself on a beach. There is an Arab with a knife. Morceau just happens to have a pistol in his pocket, and he shoots the Arab with the knife. Now, at this time in Algeria, a Frenchman murdering an Arab would not be much of a legal issue, except Morceau did not cry at his mother's funeral, and therefore he is not a moral human being. When I was at university, I learned 3 things from this book. Number 1, it's okay not to believe in God. Number 2, you are responsible for your own actions. Number 3, nobody has the right to judge you for who you are. Think about those 3 things that I learned. How hazardous they are. How dangerous they are. How dare someone not believe in a God? They truly must be immoral. And that you are responsible for your own actions. Who wants to take responsibility for what you do? Is it not better to blame others? Is it not less hazardous to say, no, I did not murder that Arab. That murderer just got killed by bullets, by something else. Make up a story. It does not matter. You are not responsible. There are always extenuating circumstances. That's just more peaceful to your mind, much less hazardous. And the third, that nobody has the right to judge you for who you are. Of course, they have the right to judge you. If you do not cry at your mother's funeral, you are not a moral human being. And when you are not a moral human being, they have the right to say you are wrong and place judgment upon you. And that is why this book can be so hazardous to a healthy mind. Those 3 things, they will destroy you. Perhaps you will turn out like Bartleby, pondering the nature of the universe and being overcome with that dread. But there is another thing, another part of this book that is hazardous. What if a human being can accept those 3 fates, accept that judgment has been laid upon him, and greet the guillotine with this brotherly sense of existence that you can be happy still facing death? Now that is truly hazardous to your well-being. The Demon-Haunted World by Carl Sagan, published in 1996. This is Sagan's ode to science. to the scientific method, to science learning, to teaching, to understanding what we know about this universe that can be verified. It is not about stories. It is not about baloney. It is not about pseudoscience. Sagan teaches in this book that we can develop a baloney detection kit so we can be skeptical about the world. If someone says something is true, we have to examine the facts and determine, is that true? If someone says they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets, how do we know that is true? We verify the sources of information, the stories, and then we learn that some stories are not true. They're just things that people said on an internet meme. But they take it up. They claim that it's true. They double down. And you get this baloney detection kit out. And you go to the sources and discover there's nothing to that story. It is all imagination. It is all fakery. And this is where it becomes truly hazardous. What happens when people question their rulers, question their superiors? They take out evidence and say, no, you are wrong. Well, the people trying to determine what is correct through facts, through the scientific method, well, they are the people in the wrong. Is that not true? That is why this book may be the most hazardous of all the books that I have shown you in this video, because it will teach you to think for yourself, not to trust everything you see on the news or watch on the internet. And that is a hazardous to your well-being beyond all others. Okay, those are my 5 books hazardous to your well-being. Obviously, I don't think these books are hazardous to your well-being. I don't think they are extremely dangerous. In fact, I think they're 5 really fantastic books that just about everyone would benefit from reading. Since I stole this idea from Please Read Your Book, I'm going to make a humble suggestion. This is not a tag video, but perhaps other booktubers have books that they think are extremely dangerous or hazardous to your well-being. Or another term, if you prefer that term, that would be warning people off reading books. Make your own list. Let's have a list of extremely dangerous books and hazardous books to your well-being and spread them across BookTube. Maybe a few people will pick these books up and read them. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.